Good morning, beloveds, and happy Friday. I know I usually come on Wednesdays. The last few weeks, it's been Friday. That's when the space has made itself available. And this is normally what I call my sacred space day. So, usually creation or, self-care time, adulting, but in a pleasurable and joyful way as we embark upon the weekend. And so this week, talk about a few things because we have a full moon coming up on Monday. So a lovely time to be reflective and be in forgiveness, self and others, but also something that recently came through for me and that I see so often, and this includes myself, is we don't often engage in our soul fueling, nourishing practices or work with mentors, therapists, what have you, until we are in like the hot mess express. And or we when we get into hot mess realm, we forget about the practices that we know about because we just can't be there. Things are too intense. And so what really occurred to me was to start sharing each week until like I run out of ideas, which might be never, to really talk about what I'm calling preventative medicine for the soul. So, we many of us take supplements, we eat well, we exercise, we do lots and lots of things to prevent getting physically sick, but we often don't take the time and the space to do things to prevent ourselves from getting emotionally, energetically sick or wobbly or out of alignment. And we disconnect from our soul. And so there's many ways in which to remain connected to what your soul has to say in a way that becomes integrated with your lifestyle so that you then don't very often go into the dark nights of the soul or the hot mess express, as I call it, or overwhelm or exhaustion. Yes, it happens for sure, but it happens a lot less when you put some practices into place. And it's my vision and business to give these tools and techniques not as more things to overwhelm you, but as things that are easily integrated, at least in my view, into your daily life, or invite you to take a look at those things that aren't serving you and release them and replace them with these beautiful and simplistic ways of being with your soul. In some traditions, technologies, we call that, the big self, little self, or the big soul, little soul. Who we are and how we show up in the external world, our personalities, our stories, our experiences make up a big part of who we are. But the soul is kind of just there with us, hanging as a friend, as a companion, wanting us desperately to connect in with it and receive information from it. And I thought this was a perfect time to share this, being that it is Friday, because hopefully you on the weekends have a little bit more spaciousness. I always ask what you're excited about or what you're perhaps creating over the weekend. And for me, creation doesn't necessarily mean a painting or an art project. It could. It could mean what you're cooking. What are you planting in the garden? What type of relationships are you deepening into and creating? And so I invite you to spend time with what I'm about to share with you today. I'll call it prescription number 1. And share a card reading and talk a little bit about the full moon that's coming up on Monday, which is just another opportunity to slow down and deepen and perhaps release and birth something out into the world, but slowly, and be very reflective. And so today's, and it's going to seem simplistic, and it's also, I'm absolutely certain it's not something you haven't heard before, but I hope I share it in such a way that if you haven't been doing this up until now, that I inspire you to really do this and why. And I have lots of stories around I have a fast-paced energy. I speak pretty quickly. I move pretty quickly. I do things pretty quickly. So trust me when I say that this first prescription of slowing down, tuning in, resting, repeat is so important for my fast-paced energetic self, and at the same time can be really difficult. So I know if I can slow it down, that things that do evolve from me come out in such a more potent, aligned, coherent way. And so it is a practice for me to really slow it down. And I know that you know this, but it really is crucial to tuning into what your own wisdom has to say, and allows you to understand what is really true for you, what perhaps is the right next action on your path, or whatever you're sitting with, or if you're in a point in your life where you're making choices between like this and that. Often, although when we listen to our inner wisdom, we also can sometimes hear it doesn't have to be this or that. It can be both and I actually pulled a card today around that, but that's not the one I'm going to share. Maybe I'll share that one in the comments. But I don't get any creative epiphanies if I don't take time to slow down. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of time. It can actually be something you do while you're doing other things, but doing them more slowly. And, when we have this big, long to-do list, our minds, immediately want to speed it all up to get everything done. We got to do it, got to do it, got to do it. And, the paradox is the more you slow down and do things with intentionality, the more you actually are able to accomplish, or you do things in a way that is more aligned. And I hate to use this term, but I will because everybody understands it, but work smarter, not harder. And it gives us an opportunity to see what is really important and to let go of unnecessary, trips to the store, or whatever that's fueling us. And a lot of times that's a direct reflection of being online all the time and consumerism. So I'll speak to that as well. But a lot of our busyness, a lot of our rushing has to do with external messages that we are getting. And we get a lot. We get bombarded. The numbers in terms of the amount of information we receive in nanoseconds in today's world, our physical structure, our energetic bodies as humans were not designed to receive all of this information flooding our systems the way it does. And so next week I'll be talking about silence, but right now I'll just be talking about slowing down. And I once had a teacher say to me, I'll share two wisdom bites from two different teachers. One, it's true every single time that I slow it down, but she says, the more you slow down, the more you can manipulate time. And I have found that to be true time and time and time again. It's like, okay, Dina, you're rushed, and you can feel it in your body. And you can feel the energy getting like just really fragmented and frazzled. And so it's like, whew, take a moment to slow down. Nothing's going anywhere. The to-do list isn't going anywhere. I always joke that says, I'm going to die with a to-do list a mile long. Who cares? Like, who cares? Is it really that important? Not, yeah, certain things are. And then the other wisdom bite, because I do move quickly, and I don't remember who it was from. I actually think it was one of my dance instructors over the years, teaching a new combination. And despite the pace and rhythm of the music, she said, go slow, go at the pace you think is slow, and then go 10 times slower. And it was like, oh man, like that was really difficult. And I remind myself of that all the time. So even when I'm doing what I'll call the mundane things, like taking a shower, I go really slow and I tune in. So it's not that I'm creating some separate space, although I do, to slow down and listen. And that I'll talk about next week in the practice of silence. But even those things that I do that are part of, if you want to call it the to-do list, I have learned to slow it down and tune into myself during those times and really focus on one thing at a time and tune into what my wisdom is saying to me. And so while I'm washing dishes, I've said it before, it's a very slow transitional part of my day. And I've come to enjoy that part and look forward to it most of the time. Showering, walking from one place to another within your home, or going for a walk, of course. There's no reason to do that quickly, but to do it really, really slowly. And so when you feel like you've got a lot happening and a lot going on, I'm going to actually ask you to resist the urge to do more. I know it sounds paradoxical, but resist the urge. And this is sometimes where holding the boundary and learning when to say no to, sometimes to yourself and in your own, rabbit holes you want to go down, or little squirrely things you want to do. And of course with others. And because when we're exhausted, it does not help us get anything done any quicker. When we're overwhelmed, it doesn't help us and assist us in our highest good to do those things that are really important to us, or sometimes even the tasks we don't love to do. We really don't get them done any faster when we're overwhelmed and exhausted. And when we slow down in this way, we are more aware prior to going into the hot mess express or going into the overwhelm and exhaustion that we're on the edge of that. And we can make choices of what's important, what really needs to happen, and what doesn't. What can I let go of? What's not so important? And then, of course, do those things that Fridays are all about pleasure. So I'm going to ask you to sit with, what do you want to do creatively or otherwise, sexually, sensually, that bring you pleasure tonight and this weekend. And so the slow down practice, the rest, naps, sometimes there's certain weeks where I nap an hour every day. And sometimes my inner mean girl wants to beat myself up for it, but almost like 99% of the time when I get up from my nap, I'm completely inspired. If I go with not knowing the answer, or going into my nap with having an idea, but perhaps not bringing it into form, I almost always wake up with some information on how to move forward. And so, I'm going to challenge you, of course, if you say you don't have the time to slow down, or you don't have the time to rest and relax. No, I'm going to say, well, how much time do you spend receiving external things, whether it's from social media, TV, news, even reading amazing books. Now, it's a big part of my own internal spiritual practice, but it is still external information coming into me. So sometimes I just have to slow down and be like right here. And, tapping into social media, sometimes we find joy and pleasure in that, catching up, watching a funny video that makes us laugh, seeing what our friends and family are doing, getting inspiration. And those are all what I'll call the light side, or the positive things of social media. Receiving inspiration, perhaps from a wisdom teacher, from a creator that you're inspired by. But what happens is it moves quickly, or can often go over into the shadow side and move from inspiration to overstimulation, to where we're receiving none of our own information, or it's very close cousin distraction, as a way to numb out from what our own information and our own wisdom and sometimes our own pain has to share with us. And an avoidance tactic of often the inner mean girl that says, you can't create this, whatever it is, you're inspired, but we're going to just keep watching other people create because, we're afraid to create ourselves, and that's me speaking truth. And so my invitation to you is, perhaps this week, most of us, at least on iPhones, now know how much time we're spending online, not counting what we're doing on our laptops and other devices, to cut that out by a quarter this week. Any external information that's coming in doesn't have to be social media necessarily, but and ironically, here I am on social media asking you to watch me. That's not lost on me. But I hope that you take this with inspiration and then hop off. I've started a practice of going offline from Friday night Sabbath sundown to Saturday night sundown, which by the time Saturday night has rolled around, I'm so into being with my family, cooking, creating, that I don't feel the need to even jump back on Saturday evening. And so it's been on Sunday. And surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, when I do get back on, I'm like, I haven't really missed much. Friends that are friends that need to connect with me, they reach out. I reach out to them. I don't go off completely in terms of, I may watch a teacher share a video, and do something creative based on that. Although that time may come really soon as well. But, really just check in with yourself on how much time you're spending receiving external information, and slow yourself down. Like, really slow yourself down. Tune in, feel what your body's saying to you. So many of us, I talked about earlier in the video, preventative medicine for our physical health. Well, often we don't slow down long enough to listen to our body telling us those clues either. So, we are this beautiful woven being of body, mind, spirit, heart, soul. And so we're listening on all planes to ourselves, and we just can't do that if we're moving at warp speed all the time. And when we make it a practice and a commitment to slow down, what I've also found interesting and experience it over and over and over again is that when I slow down, the world around me, whether it's the people or even just the energy, because things do kind of feel like they're moving at warp speed right now. And I think a lot of that's because we experienced such a slowdown in 2020 that our systems weren't used to that, and now things are kind of emerging back, and so the continuum of that there's been such length between it that right now everything seems really, really fast. But if I slow down and get intentional, everything around me seems, at least on the energetic plane, to slow down right there along with me. I bring it into coherence to match my pace instead of me trying to catch up to the warp speed pace that's going on around me. I bring it in to meet my pace and energy. And so I wanted to leave you with that. Ask what you're excited about this weekend, what perhaps you're creating. I've got my son, I'm assisting him in his creation. Besides being a musician, he's also a budding photographer. And so I have to take him on a date. So we'll have lunch and I'll do a little bit of things I need to do. And he needs to go do a photo shoot, taking some pictures of some architecture and things like that. So I'm excited about that. I'm teaching a group on Sunday, and I'm not sure which art creative process I will be working on, but I'm sure it will be one of the many here in my studio. And there may also be some creating of beauty space by first purging and letting go of some things that need to be cleaned out. And then, which full moon's a great time to do that. And so full moon, Monday, great time to take a releasing salt bath, to if you're one that has crystals and cards and magical items, to put them out into the full moon to be re-energized and recharged. It's a beautiful time to really fall back in love with yourself and your creative being and your sensuality, and forgive yourself or anyone for, either like actually forgiving them or doing it energetically. It's a great time to be in a forgiveness practice, and certainly a gratitude practice. So yay to the full moon. And I wanted to share this card with you that I pulled. And this is a deck, and I feel the need to speak to this. It's called the Earth Warriors deck. And I've had it for years, and I haven't, most of the cards in this deck are deep original Earth Warrior indigenous wisdom from cultures that are not all mine. And so it took me a long time to feel okay and in right relationship with using this deck, and knowing that I was in deep reverence and sacredness and sanctity for the wisdom shared here that come from cultures that have been marginalized, that have been colonized, and worse, genocide from all over the world. This particular card that ended up being very synchronous for this comes from the spiritual traditions of Africa. So I wanted to take a moment to honor this card, to honor this African grandmother creatrix and the medicine from this card, and be in full reverence that I'm okay with sharing it, in hopes that those whose this is their tradition, that may have been hidden from them through the diaspora and other cultural atrocities that have gone on, that perhaps this is something you can explore from yourself. And so this card, Nana Baluku, who is the African grandmother creatrix, the supreme creative principle. She created the universe, then rested. And so I honor her, and I honor the cultures from which she comes. And her message is, she rests to create. Your energy is a precious resource, and there are ways of being that can enhance it, amplify it, and replenish it. Give yourself sufficient rest, and you shall find the way forward more effortless. Explore the lifestyle that grows your inner resources, rather than requiring constant exertion and exhaustion to accomplish an endless list of external pursuits. You need this shift in being now, because you are ready to accomplish more. For this to take place, there needs to be less effort and more wisdom. Trust and value what can be accomplished through rest. You have more than enough energy to bring to life the sacred visions held within your heart. An increase of energy and peacefulness is indicated. You are guided to choose high energy people, places, and purposes. This does not necessarily mean that which is highly stimulating. Rather, it refers to that which regenerates you with peacefulness and joy. Give generously to yourself to be able to give generously to others. You have unusual ideas or ways of being that suit you, but may not suit others. Work with what works for you best without trying to force yourself to conform. This brings well-being and creative success. So I really adored this, and there's several more pages on spiritual guidance, specifically from African spirituality and the holistic view it takes, and the word and the spiritual wisdom of Ubuntu, of which we have no equivalent here in the West. And so I will share images to give deeper reverence to this card in the comments. And so I thank you for being here with me today. Please do share images, pictures, words, thoughts on what you're excited about, what you may be creating, garden pictures, sacred space pictures, food pictures, nourishment, art projects. I love to see it and witness and honor it all. So I thank you, and have a wonderfully spacious and nourishing weekend.